my friends. Welcome to Sort of Brilliant, a show where the characters are made up and Hogwarts house sorting absolutely does matter. My name is Rachel.
And I'm her best friend and co-host, Lauren. Every other week, we're going to invade a fandom and determine whether your favorite character belongs in Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, or Slytherin. There's bound to be some arguments along the way.
But in the end, we're always right.
Well, according to us.
According to us.
Hi, guys. Holy crap, am I excited to be back with you here today with Lauren, of course. Lauren, say hi to all the beautiful people.
Hi. Hope you had a good Christmas. Ours was 2 days ago? 2 days ago. We had to do a very quick turnaround on this because of what we're talking about.
Very true. We've got a good episode today. Wonder Woman, and what a wonder of a woman she is, who can step on me anytime. You like that? You like my radio show host voice? No?
No, and I hated the pun.
And what a wonder.
And you're thirsting.
Woman. Oh my God. Well, warning. I'm going to be doing that a lot because Diana, oh my God, Diana. I can't, guys. I can't. You seen her? Like, have y'all ever just seen her? Well, Lauren will match it with Steve, okay? Because she's a huge simp for Chris Pine.
Yeah, but I can rein it in.
Can you?
Yeah, I can. I can just state
what if I talk about his fanny pack?
Appreciation. I love that fanny pack. I was really upset he didn't
There it
get
is.
the
What about when he
American
tries to
flag
have
on?
a German accent?
That's what he wanted. He can't have a German accent. I was staring at him like, this is the most American motherfucker I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, nobody believes this, do they? And they just let him in. Just let him into the fucking
really funny in the first one.
Castle.
He's like, I am a big fan of your work. He was very pretty in that first movie. In the second one, he's like more rugged.
Fuck.
He has a different look in the second one. I'm not sure what that's about.
The bomber jacket, almost a jumpsuit thing.
I guess it's the 80s style.
And his gray hair that the hairdresser was like, fuck it, just let it happen. Like, she was like, whatever.
I don't know what was going on there because sometimes it was like, I didn't see gray and then it randomly would be gray and then like the red on top of it. I'm like, what color is this man's hair? What's going on here? Not as beautiful as her, okay?
Don't. She was fine. She's good looking, but I wasn't like.
Wow. Well, she's like my Amazonian goddess. Like, holy crap. Something about tall girls. Anyway,
Everybody is taller than you, so I don't know what that means for you.
It could mean a lot of things. We'll just move on. All right. I like everyone.
Uh-huh.
Well, honestly, I rewatched the first one this morning just to get to solidify my sorting ideas, and I love that first movie. I love it a lot. I really do.
Yeah.
And what an excellent character study it is for Steve and Diana. That's who we are primarily sorting today. Sometimes we do 3 characters. We've done 2 before, but
our last episode was 2.
Yeah. So
actually, I think we've only done
just
one.
Focusing on them.
Have we even done an episode that's come out with? Yeah, the Marvel Avengers is the only one with 3. Everybody else was 2 because we talked too fucking much.
We've just recorded others where there were
more than.
Yeah. And we also have lined up episodes with 3 people, but I kind of like the 2-person one. Oof. Well, good luck to us.
Yeah.
No, I think we'll be fine. But yeah, I really enjoyed rewatching the first one today. I hadn't watched it, I don't know, really long time. And then like most other people, I watched the second one when it came out. I caved for an HBO Max subscription to watch it. And fun times. I enjoyed some of it. Enjoyed a lot of it. I mean, I don't know what to talk about it.
I'm just here to simp for Chris Pine. It's what I do in most of the movies he's in, if not all of them.
I'm here to simp for Diana because
I think Star Trek, the first Star Trek came out around Mother's Day when I was in, maybe it was middle school. And my dad came in and was like, your mom wants to see this movie. Would you be willing to go see this movie? Because I'm not like the biggest I'm not a Star Trek fan at all, actually. I was like, I will go see it to see Chris Pine walking around in those tight ass shirts. I made it clear. That was the only reason I was letting my mother drag me to this for Mother's Day. I'm such a giving child. But
you really are.
Yeah.
Was that the first Star Trek that he was in? The first Star Trek that he was in, it was the first time I ever met a guy online to go on a date with. And this was like a while ago.
Yeah.
And he catfished the shit out of me. He didn't look anything he didn't look anything like he did in his pictures. And
like he looked worse?
I mean, yeah. And he had a really squeaky voice, like a really high-pitched Elmo-like voice.
It's either the early 2010s or the very late.
It had to be 2009 or 2010.
Yeah.
Had to be.
Yeah.
I think 2009. And he was like, let's go, like on MySpace. He's like, yeah, let's go hang out. And, you can come by after. You'll meet all my friends, like to my place. Because he was the first guy I ever dated with his own apartment.
Jesus.
Dated, right? I was 19. So I was like, hell yeah, I got on a bus. And like this like hot tattooed guy. He's taking me out to see Star Trek in IMAX. And I'm going to his apartment. Oh my gosh. And I saw him and I was like, oh no.
Did you go on the date?
Of course I did. I'm me.
Turned around.
I stayed the whole night.
At his apartment?
And we went to the movie and then I felt awful if I wouldn't go back to his apartment. So I did.
Rachel.
And then none of his friends were there.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is what happened. I dated one guy for 4 years in high school. I had no idea like what anything was. Okay. So, I mean, after looking at Chris Pine all that time and then back to this dude who catfished me, I was like, I got to go home, man. I got to get out of here. Like, that's my Star Trek Chris Pine story.
We got to sort those Star Treks.
Yeah, we really do. It'll be interesting to rewatch those. How many were there?
3. And then Paramount shafted us on the Chris Hemsworth, Chris Pine Jizz Fest movie that we were supposed to get. So upsetting.
I think I only saw the first 2, so that'll be fun.
They were all pretty good. Like, I enjoyed all of them.
Yeah, and I'm not a big Star Trek fan in general either, so I liked them. So,
yeah.
My husband keeps trying to get me to watch the new Star Trek.
Oh, yeah, the
series.
TV series.
Yeah, with that woman named Michael and like.
Yeah, it's very.
I tried. It's just not.
I hear. Yeah.
No, he's in love with it. He loves it so much. And he's like, just give it a chance. And I did, but I'm just like, space and science.
I'm into all the new Star Wars stuff that's going on right now, but I did not ever disguise the fact that I only went to see those Star Trek movies for Chris Pine. And like, they were all good, but I don't need any more after. Like, I only need the Chris Pine stuff, so.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. I got suckered into going. I stayed for Chris, so blame him and not my young stupidity.
Anne Hathaway nostalgia.
Oh God! Let's talk about more hot women. Let's talk about Anne Hathaway. So
what are we like 15 minutes in, and this is what we've been talking about?
I'm sorry, you keep talking about pretty people, and like my hoe energy is just jumping out.
Oh,
so
God.
All right. As far as sorting the characters go, we had a really interesting conversation last night about it because Lauren had Diana pegged, and Steve, did you see how I paused when I said it? Because I was going to make the joke, but anyway, Diana pegging. Anyway, you've made me lose my train of thought. So she had Diana down packed. And then for Steve, she was like, no, I'm pretty sure I got it. But he did one thing that really threw me off.
No, it was
so later I'm going to ask you.
No.
Okay.
No, it was a lot. I was like going back and forth.
Really?
Because I was ready to come into this episode like, God, this is just a fucking Gryffindor movie, isn't it? But I really and I think that's the surface level too. Even though at first, Rachel wanted to put Diana in Hufflepuff, and I considered it just because we have been on that streak of like outer worldly people have been usually Hufflepuff, like Thor and Cass.
Yeah.
And like and I think a lot of that is due to like the naivete aspect, but also Thor and Cass have really strong communities. Not that Diana doesn't have really strong communities, but the second that Steve showed up and her mom was like, "You can never come back here. You'll like be with the humans forever." She like was like, "Bye, see ya. This is my job." And then, which I was like, okay, but then that could still mean she's doing like Cass did and moving from one community to another. But then the first movie kind of alluded to this, and then the second one really cemented it, that she never ever tried to be a part of humanity. And like that was the lesson at the end of the first one. She was like, my job isn't to like dictate what they do. It's just to be here as like a watcher and a sometimes helper, but I'm not here to tell them like how to be human. And she never tried to be a part of humanity herself. Like, and you especially see that in the second one. She has like no friends and is totally removed from everybody. So I was like, no, not a Hufflepuff at all.
So this was the tough thing about last night when we were having this conversation, was that I hadn't watched the first Wonder Woman in so long. When did it come out? 2017?
Yeah.
And I hadn't watched it maybe in 2-3 years or something like that. And
Since
I just remembered her being... No, I watched it again that year. Like I saw it twice in theaters.
It came out
I hadn't watched it since then.
Okay.
Because Wonder Woman did something to me on a visceral level. Like it
No, I get you. Like when they're
not because
when all those all those women are fighting the German men with their guns, I like cried.
Yep.
I was like, why am I crying at this scene? Like all these women beating these men's asses. The No Man Land scene is still like probably one of my top scenes in like anything. And I know it's like, we're not here to talk about this stuff. Like, we're here to sort characters or whatever. I know there's a lot of like discussion around what kind of feminism it is or whatever. But I think if you can get anything out of it as a woman, then that's a good start. And I definitely, I mean, obviously Rachel and I are both white women too. So we had a more privileged or easier time connecting with the movie. But maybe every woman can get something out of a woman being more powerful than everyone else around. Like all the men around her.
I think
telling her that
I agree. I think stripping it down to a very base level where Steve is like, she's my secretary, and there's all these tropes in it that are like, she's supposed to be the little woman and whatever. And just seeing her in that No Man's Land scene just rip off the outfit and come out as Wonder Woman and have her Lord of the Rings I am no man moment, which Lauren doesn't get because I have to get her to watch Lord of the Rings. Excuse her. But it did something to me. I had never seen a woman in that position with the movie was so focused around her, and she wasn't just sexualized. That wasn't part of it. Like, she was so vulnerable and sweet and powerful. And you don't see that so often in films and in media. Women have to be like sexy and sarcastic and like above it all and whatever to be the big hero. And Diana's not that at all. She's sexy, but
I think Chris Pine said something after the first movie too about how there needed to be more movies where like what his role was or the man's role needed to be as like the sidekick and supporter of the woman rather than the main role, or even as like the second main. Like he's just there to prop her up basically in that movie. So yeah.
And he's not diminished either. Like his role is incredibly important to her characterization into the story. Like she does need him the way any superhero needs their sidekick, love interest, whatever they get from that person. But it was so incredible to see a woman in that role. Just, it really felt like the first time in my life seeing it after I'm a 90s kid, and there was 5 iterations of Batman by the time I was in high school, and Superman movies were always a thing, and it's just always male superheroes. I never saw any woman that powerful, like on the big screen in that way. And I think it spoke to a lot of women that way, just on a base level. It was something really incredible to see. So that's why I hadn't rewatched it in so long, because it makes me emotional, which is silly. I feel silly admitting it and saying it, but it does. So just Lauren had said, you can watch the second one and we can sort, but the first one is a really good character study for sorting. And she was really right, because we agreed already on their houses after watching the second one. But when I went back to the first one, I was like, oh, holy crap.
That's like a simplification of what happened too.
Yeah.
Not that we really fought, but luckily it could have been a fight. Because you had said,
no, we didn't. We actually didn't.
No, we didn't
fight over this one.
It could have been if you, because you said Hufflepuff first, and then you were being real stupid about Ravenclaws. Like, not seriously, I was gonna beat you up. But she was saying stuff like Diana like hit the blue arrow in the second movie, which means she's a Ravenclaw, and she was like, and also she can read. And I was like, you need to shut up.
Yeah, she knows things. She's definitely Ravenclaw.
but like once I said Gryffindor, or I didn't say it first. I didn't say what I was thinking at first, but I was talking about how I thought maybe Steve and Diana could be the same, but then Steve had been doing or saying some things that I was like, if he's the same thing as Diana, he is completely mature and flawless as this house. And I was like, and I don't think he is that.
Yeah.
So then, I mean, I guess when we get to Steve, you'll see, but I was like, there's no way the other house, well, no, I'll talk about it later. But it was really funny that I was like, if he's the same house as Diana, he has to be mature because he was handling things way too well if he was in that house.
No, 100%. Like Diana, really quickly, I realized she wasn't a Hufflepuff.
No, she's a Gryffindor. It is kind of a Gryffindor movie because, yeah.
Yeah. My Hufflepuff judgment came from literally not remembering it and thinking of her in terms of, like Lauren said earlier, alien, powerful goddess type with a strong community. And I was like, oh, duh, Hufflepuff. And then I started remembering things and watching it. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You're nothing like a Hufflepuff.
All of the super like impactful lines and moments are just like the most Gryffindor coded things in the world. Like her mom keeps going like the world isn't ready for you yet. And like the world of men don't deserve you. And
right.
There's just like, I can't even remember all the times that like Gryffindor stuff was coming out of everybody's mouth at her, or she said something Gryffindor.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And just, well, I mean, listen, I don't know that we have to work very hard to prove Gryffindor Diana, but I can tell you there are a couple parts in the first one that like scream it. And there's just there's no argument for me on my end for another house, like after rewatching. So big one is when they're talking to, listen, I want to call him Lupin.
I know.
Aries,
it's Remus Lupin. He was, I don't even remember. It's Sir Patrick, I think. I think it was Sir Patrick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So she's talking to Lupin and and they're talking and she just flips out and she's like, what do you mean you're not going to be out in the front lines fighting with your men?
No,
and like she like flipped out.
No,
she
but it wasn't talking to him. It was the Steve went into the meeting of the generals in the House of Lords, and Lupin was, I'm going to call him that now. Lupin was negotiating the amnesty. So right. she was saying that or Steve had convinced her that the German and the scientists were going to kill a bunch of people and that they needed to go, and she was convinced that she had to stop Ares and Ares would be at the front. So the head general was saying that that it was fine because like he was like, it's fine if more people die is what Steve was saying because that's what soldiers are meant to do or whatever. And she got really, really, really mad about it and was like, you're disgusting. You're like a horrible person. Like, how can you be in charge of these people? And like Steve's trying to drag her out of there. And honestly, it's funny too, because the thing that saved her from being like killed or grabbed for treason or whatever is that she was a woman and that Steve was like, I'm sorry. Yeah. She's like, she's dumb. She doesn't know what she like, and got her out of there.
Sure.
But yeah, when she was screaming like that, it was hugely Gryffindor. And then actually the part that I felt was most Gryffindor came right after that when like Steve had dragged her out of there and she was like, how can you be like complacent in this and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I was lying. We're actually going to the front. And immediately she gets so she's like, you were lying? Like I can't, like she was seriously mad at him. And he was like, what are you talking about? This is what you wanted.
That whole scene is like, it happens one after the other. So that whole thing is literally what I was talking about too, is the major Gryffindor moment. Like it really is two separate moments. You're right. But they just like those moments where she's just screaming about the rightness and the wrongness of leaving your men out there and not fighting with them and alongside them. And she just had no qualms of being like going up to this guy's face and being like, you're a coward, like spit. Like she was so pissed off. And And the liar thing was so Tony Stark in Endgame when he freaks out on Steve Rogers and he's like, you're a liar, and then collapses. It really reminded me of that. There's that hugely righteous Gryffindor energy in that moment. I wouldn't attribute it to another house. I don't think I can.
Yeah, I mean, she's hugely, and Diana is very, she's very simple in her morality. Like, it's not complicated at all. And actually, it's extremely naive to how it starts out that, like, she has been taught, I think, mistaught. Like, she wasn't taught the nuances, but that the entire reason that man is bad is because of Ares. And if she kills Ares, then man will be, like, good and kind again or whatever.
Right.
And her, like, come to moment was also, like, her fall from grace, where she was like, I'm not going to help these people anymore because the people are bad. It's not like just Ares or whatever, when she thought that she had killed him. And she, like, wasn't going to help Steve and the rest of his crew, like, save anybody.
Yeah.
And she was just like, I'm done. And Steve was like,
right.
all right, well, I got to keep going. So
yeah. And he really grounds her. She really needs him. Gryffindors need those kind of people around them to bring them back to reality, because it's when your worldview as a Gryffindor gets shattered. First of all, you think you're right about everything already. Like, speaking as your resident Gryffindor here, I think I'm right about everything, especially if it's tied up with my morality. It's a gut feeling. I can't explain it further. It's right. It's me. It's right. So when that shatters the way that it did for her at the end with Ares there, she really needed someone to come in and say, listen, it's not how you've always seen it, but it's still worth fighting for. And she really needed to be pulled back like that. And again, it was so Gryffindor, the way that she reacted to all of it.
And it was
where she was just like, my mother was right.
Yeah, well, I was going to say too, because it wasn't even necessarily Steve, because she stayed up there until Ares actually did show up. And then, like, the funny thing was that, like, she was not tempted at all ever when he was like, we can make the world beautiful again. She was like, no,
not at all.
Like,
yeah. You could see she wanted a peaceful world, but she literally flat out was like, I can't be part of that.
Right, like killing humans.
No,
yeah.
man. Yeah, even after she had that breakdown where she was like, maybe they don't deserve my help, she still wasn't willing to do that. Like, it completely went against everything she believes, even if it had been shattered in that moment. So that righteousness, that morality, that's a big Gryffindor right there.
Yeah.
And then in the second movie, well, I mean, I guess if you're listening, you've seen it. So
yeah,
spoiler warning.
From here on out, there will be specific spoilers. So I guess stop now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Skip ahead until you hear us say, so Steve, and then we'll tell you when to stop there too.
Yeah, for sure. No, but even with the second movie, just a big moment that I spoke to Lauren about what actually, because again, I watched these out of order. Mm-hmm. So the moment that dragged me into, oh shit, she's a Gryffindor. They were fighting I don't know, they're not henchmen. They were like bodyguards.
The president's
or whatever.
Bodyguards?
The president's bodyguards. Yeah, Secret Service, whatever. That's the word. Yeah. Henchmen. And she's, her powers are like getting zapped away by Kristen Wiig over there. And Steve is like, screw it. And he goes and grabs a giant sword off the wall and he's about to stab these dudes. And she's like, no, Steve, it's not their fault. And I was like, all right, Gryffindor. Even in this moment where you're like bruised and bloody and beaten down and powerless in a way you literally never have been, you're still like, their lives matter. It's so important to make this distinction.
Well, her little tantrum where she was like, I've never asked for anything and this is all I want ever, was giving me big Dean Winchester vibes too. Like, this isn't fair. This is not fair to me.
That's after
everything.
No?
I can't, they might have discussed it before. Because they discussed it a couple of times. Like, she needs to renounce her wish.
Yeah. Right. At the end, though, when she does it, like when she actually is like faced with it. Oh, my God.
I think it's
so freaking Gryffindor.
I think it's the first time they go into her apartment and he sees like all the photos that she has of him and like going to Trevor Ranch. And she's like, I've literally never asked for anything. And I am like here cut off from my family. I guess we'll get into talking about Steve. His rationalization of all this.
Right. Well, when we get there, the response to Diana's tantrum is what solidified Steve's house for me. So it was a really good moment where I was like, oh, boom, boom, Gryffindor and other thing. but yeah, just that admission of like, I really never ask for shit. Like, I'm all about everyone else all the time. And I've never loved anyone else. This was the other big thing. She loves like a Gryffindor. Big time. Like, we latch on to people and it's all we can see. Yeah. Sorry. Like, we're frustrating and clingy and annoying, but we're also the best. And we'll never love anyone again the way we loved you. So that also pushed me over because she really didn't look at any other woman or man, like whatever. She was like, Steve. And he's all she wished for. And she was like, really? I really can't keep the one thing, really?
I don't know the canon of Wonder Woman either. I know Steve returns in multiple different ways, multiple different times. Or it's like Steve's grandson, who's also named Steve, who looks exactly like him and sometimes or whatever.
Weird.
Yeah. I mean, the way the movie did it wasn't.
Not the best.
No, not at all, in the slightest. And I don't know anything about the DC universe beyond having seen the Wonder Woman movies. Like, I didn't watch Batman v Superman in order to see her in those. And I haven't watched, I think the only other DC movie I've seen is Suicide Squad. Or no, Birds of Prey.
Really?
Yeah, I saw Birds of Prey, which was...
You didn't see Aquaman?
No, I know you probably did because of Jason Momoa.
No.
Birds of Prey was fine. But so I don't know anything like about afterwards. But since the first movie is happening in 2017 or whatever, and Bruce Wayne has gone through the trouble of getting her this photo, I assume that even after having had this moment with Steve in 1984, she still loves him and has not dated anybody else. So.
What a simp of a Gryffindor. I mean, really. Nate, give me one other house that's like that with their people to the way she is. Like,
Slytherins can be, except for the moments when they're not, which is when we. This was what I had to explain. I had to explain a lot of this to Rachel last night. Gryffindors, but like Rachel said in her own words that, and like funnily enough too, because Slytherins are the one that are usually branded selfish, but she was the one who said that Gryffindors are selfish about love. So she was like, yeah, if I die, George can never remarry.
Right.
I'm not allowed to have another friend.
So my husband's a Ravenclaw. Yeah, no, my husband's a Ravenclaw and he's exactly the kind of person that would say, of course, I want you to go on and be happy and find happiness without me. And I'm like, don't ever say shit like that to me. What's wrong with you? You should be telling me right now, I never want to see you happy with anyone else. How dare you live a life without me? Try to find joy. What are you, sick? Yeah. And personally, think as little of me as you want. This is me, baby. I don't want you remarrying. I don't want you dating. I don't want you. No, like, sorry. It is what it is. We are the story. You don't be bringing anyone else into my story with you. Sorry, that's how I am. And I promise you other Gryffindors are like that too. So when they're at that point in the story where Steve says, there's so many other people, like there's so many things you could be doing. And she's like, I'll never love again. I was like, oh, no, you fucking Gryffindor. It was so dramatic, but it was so true. Like it was just pure emotional from the heart, Gryffindor.
Does she ever tell him she loves him? She didn't in the first one because he says it right before he goes and blows himself up. But
no, not in the first one. I mean, it's implied like heavily, and she says it in the end there.
Yeah, she like goes into scream tantrums both times that he leaves her.
Yeah, yeah. It's very, very heavily implied. She's over the moon for him, and it's yeah, that moment was a big Gryffindor tell for me too, because we don't want to love anyone else. We don't want to move on.
Well, I mean,
what do you mean move on other people?
Yeah, and he. I think it's implied, or they try to symbolize too, and certainly this is mostly what we see of Steve, that he's supposed to be her, like you said, like her grounding in what humanity actually is. No, so I would agree with that. Like Steve isn't perfect, and they show that. They have that point where she's asking, it's an awful name too. She's asking Chief, what like he had told her about how the last war had decimated Native American tribes. And she's like, who did that to your people? And he like points over at Steve and says his people. And you can tell she's kind of like, what? Like Steve would never. And it's like, no, Steve would. Steve's doing it to like 18-year-old German boys right now. But
right.
So it's like, and he is the one who tells her like when she's like having her freak out moment, because Ares is supposedly dead and they're still, and the Germans are still fighting. And she's like, it's not supposed to be like that. And he's like, maybe they are, like, maybe they just are, like, maybe people are bad. And I think he takes credit because he says, maybe it's all our faults. And I think he says something like, it's certainly mine. Like I would put myself in that category.
He's like, it's me too. Yeah. It's all of us. It's me too.
So I think I definitely think he's supposed to be her like lightning rod or whatever. Like he's her like beacon of like, this is what humanity is, like really is. And this is what you love. So now we're getting into cast territory again, but it's in a different way because she's like, she's not necessarily learning from it and emulating it like a Hufflepuff would in order to move into another community. She's using it in order to write her morality or like to understand her next course of action.
It was a devastating blow for her to realize that humans can be evil. Humans can be the problem. They are the problem. It hit her right in her belief system, which is really hard for a Gryffindor. And I'm sorry for bringing up Supernatural again, but it did remind me a lot of...
I don't think we ever are.
No, I'm not sorry at all. It reminded me of the whole thing with Chuck and Dean, where he's just like, nothing is real. And he needs Cass to ground him and be like, you asked about what all this was real? We are. And it gives Dean pause. And you see Dean like really fight harder after that because he wants that to be true. And it's the same for Diana. And that was another like huge Gryffindor moment. It was like, she was so upset. She was devastated, but she's still going to fight for what she really, really believes is the truth. And it's that they were worth fighting for. And you can attribute a lot of that to Steve and that whole speech. Like she does need Steve. He has to combat some of that naivety. Like,
yeah. And I mean, she could have been bitter too, right? Like the whole reason Steve dies is because, because of humanity, because of the war that humans started and then him deciding that he needed to save it. And actually when he is like saying goodbye to her and she's like, no, let me do it or whatever. Like his big thing is like, I can save today. You can save, what is it? The rest of the world, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's pretty clear in what his role is, and what he's supposed to do. And then like what Diana is or what Diana could be. And I think he does his best to help her be that too, as much as he can understand. Because I mean, like their whole thing was like a whirlwind, and he didn't believe Ares was a thing until he saw him. So
right, which is so funny. Like you see her rip off her robes and like go into Amazon goddess mode and hit bullets off with her like wrist cuffs, and he's like, yeah. I mean, I kind of believe it. Like, really, Steve?
Well, I mean, he was in Themyscira, and they had the lasso around him, and he was just like, all right, sure. Like, riding that wave.
Yeah. I thought it was so funny. I was telling Lauren earlier where she's, like, so mad at him for lying. Like, you lied? What do you mean you lied? And he just wraps the lasso around. He's like, yeah, if only we had, like, some sort of truth-telling lasso to help us out here so that you can see the problem. And she's like, none of that matters. Like, she's so mad in that moment. So Gryffindor. So stupidly Gryffindor. I love her. And also, she fights like a Gryffindor, okay? She flings herself into battle. She doesn't think at all. She's like, I am Diana. I am here to do this job. Only I can do it. And flings herself into it. So when she's getting her ass beat in the second one, she's like, what do you mean? What? She was so self-assured. She was so sure. And
well, I mean, my dad like watched these movies and are really like he would like come upstairs and watch like chunks of it and then leave and then come back or whatever. And he had come back. He watched the first part of the second one and then left for like the whole middle chunk and then came back for the end part and was like, what did I miss? And I was trying to explain to him like how the stone was a monkey's paw. So like it gives you your wish, but it takes your most precious thing from her. Because he was like, why is she so weak? It was when actually they were fighting like the president's men or whatever. And he was like, her powers are the most precious thing. Like he like was super incredulous about it. And I was like, well, I mean, I was like, yeah, I mean, like it's her culture and her heritage and her identity. It's not just like they're like, oh, I'm super strong. And she like takes pride in that. It's like, this is what she grew up as. Like, this is who she is.
It's her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her power is her.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess that's another distinction too from like the Hufflepuffs we've seen, because we talked specifically about how Cass cared about losing his powers, but it was more to the sense that he couldn't be useful to other people, not that he was like, oh, I have to be able to fly and heal things in order to be like a person. And I think Thor too, I mean, when he went into his depressive state, he purposely didn't use his powers like that. Yeah. So, and it's like different for Diana. This is who she is. Like, this is how she does. Yeah.
It's how she also defines the world, because she needs to be useful to people. You see it throughout the second one too. Like, she's running around doing all these tasks of just like saving little girls everywhere, which is beautiful. And she needs those powers to feel like herself, because they're so deeply ingrained in her. It's like Lauren said, it's her culture, it's her life, it's her childhood, it's her whole entire being. So it is extremely precious to her. It's everything. So she doesn't doubt it ever. And then to see her without it and still like just keep, God, she could have died, I guess, right? Like with the powers being zapped out of her that way. I don't know if by that scene.
I mean, yeah, sure. She was bleeding from bullet wounds. So yeah.
Yeah. And again, how friggin' Dean Winchester, it's just like, beat me bloody into the face. I'm dying on my 2 feet. Like, it's, I don't care. I'm going down while standing. And it was just so Gryffindor. So yeah, I don't know how other people feel. I actually haven't had this conversation about Wonder Woman with anybody about putting her into a house before. So I don't know if there are other opinions out there, but be hard to convince me otherwise. She's a Gryffindor.
Not a Ravenclaw.
No. God, let it go. I was like, oh, she shot blue. Uh-oh, Ravenclaw. And Lauren's like, well, don't bother saying anything else because the podcast is canceled. So it's like, take a joke, Slytherin. Speaking of Slytherins, go ahead, Lauren.
Spoiler. Oh, we get to talk about Steve now? Steve Trevor?
I think so.
I would have crawled into his fanny pack for the whole movie and just lived there.
Ridiculous.
His ridiculous excitement over seeing planes. Oh my God, I wanted to die.
Here she goes.
I will tell you too, when they were on the mall and he was like, is that a plane? And saw the National Air and Space Museum. And Diana was like, let me show you something. I literally went, oh no. And my mom was like, what? And I was like, she's taking him to the Air and Space Museum. And my mom was like, so what? And I was like, he helped do this. I was like, it was extremely reminiscent. And like the track that was playing too, wasn't that when the song was going on? The Love You song?
I can't
remember the name of it now. But it was extremely reminiscent to me of the Doctor Who Van Gogh episode where they take him into the future to see. Yeah, I was like waiting for it. And I was like, if Steve cries, I'm going to lose it. And luckily he was just like in super awe of all these spaceships. But I was like, oh my God. Yeah, he went the opposite. He went, which I think puts him in this in Slytherin too. Like he went much more in the excited direction than he did in like the overwhelmed direction. He was just like, he was like, I want to fly a jet. When can I go into space? Like, this is what I want to do.
Right.
And Diana was just there to give him every single thing he asked for. Like, that's all.
Oh, yeah. Anything you want, baby. Let's steal this plane. Come on.
Yeah, seriously. From the Smithsonian. He's like, wow, you can get to Cairo in a day? You have plans that do that? She's like, oh, I wish I could take you on. He was like, be on one. I want to fly one. And she's like, you got it, baby. I'm going to steal you a jet.
Yep. Lucky Steve to be loved by a Gryffindor. We're really the best. No, I'm kidding. All right. Yeah, he's definitely a Slytherin man. But Lauren wavered. Lauren, tell them why.
You say wavered like you had any idea. You didn't know he was a Slytherin until I said it. And then you were like, yep.
I never have any idea until I like really deeply process it and talk to you. And then I'm like,
She's texting me like, George says he's a Hufflepuff because he's wearing yellow. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I went, George clocked Diana as a Gryffindor and said Steve is a Hufflepuff because he's in yellow. Steve's clearly a Gryffindor. And then she was like, actually, I think he's a Slytherin. And I was like, hold on. I don't think so. There's no evidence for that, except all of the evidence I'm about to say. Hang on. You're right. He is a Slytherin.
I said a bunch of stuff. But no, I was between Gryffindor and Slytherin for Steve. And I think the easy answer is Gryffindor. Because like I said, I was ready to go like, well, this fucking Gryffindor Love Fest movie. But there was stuff that Steve was saying or doing that was like pinging me and saying at least not Gryffindor. And then I looked at everything else. I was like, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff. Like I was looking at all of it and I kept coming back to Slytherin. And like there's so many things because Rachel had said that she called Steve a Gryffindor because of the way he fights, which I don't know if you want to explain that because I wasn't as strong on that one.
Because the second movie doesn't give you a lot in terms of character.
Yeah.
Not like the first one does. And what you see a lot of Steve is him flinging himself into things to protect Diana all the time. And it's like how a Gryffindor fights where they just like jump in without thinking. But when I gave it more thought, especially when Lauren brought up Slytherin, I was like, hang on a second. That's how Steve Rogers fights too. So it's more Slytherin than it is Gryffindor because he had no problem picking up that knife and going and getting rid of Secret Service.
No, or he had a gun on a guy and he cocked it, I think, and he made the face because Diana had said it's not their fault. Like he was ready to shoot the dude. So there was definitely a difference there. Yeah, I mean the stuff that was like, I'll start with the first movie. The stuff that like wasn't sitting with me for Gryffindor is, so like the very first moments when he's in the cave, Diana asked him why he fought, why he was a part of the war or whatever, and he said he basically says my father taught me that you either do something or you do nothing, and I already tried doing nothing, and I was like. So it kind of started lending itself to Steve wasn't a part of the war because he was like, yeah, like this is the right, like I gotta save America or gotta like be a part of like this big thing or like this is the right thing to do. It sounded like he tried to not be a part of the war and like couldn't not be a part of it. First of all, because World War I was just a huge thing. Like when he's trying to explain to the Amazonians how big it is, he's like that's what they called it, the war to end all wars. They really felt like the world was going to end. And I think from what Steve like says and how he said that is kind of like he sat there until he felt like he couldn't anymore. Like he felt like there was something that he could be doing to help. And it was less a Gryffindor's like gut burning need to jump in right away and more like I've sat here watching this long enough and I really think that there is a specific thing that I could do to be helpful and it's not cool of me to not do that. Because he was a spy, which is like a very specialized a spy who flew. And this was when planes were brand new. Planes were invented like 5 years before World War I. So, or at least the type of planes that they were flying. So he was a super specialized like person. And he went in, and so it's almost like he went from doing nothing to doing like the very most, which is a very Slytherin thing because you either do nothing or you do everything, basically. So you do nothing or you do the thing that you're doing correctly. And you do it correctly the first time. So
that's such a good way to put it. You either don't do it or you do it right because no one else is going to do it right but me.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And like you can tell.
I know you.
Yeah. And he's like,
kind.
in his, my kind, his like, seriously, he's flying planes, which are brand new technology. He's a spy. He's an American working with the British, which is also super like specialized. So like, he really went from like, I was doing nothing until I decided that I needed to do something. And then he really did something.
It's true. So. You're right. It's very true. He just, I mean, I saw it in the second movie after you said it and after you pointed it out, and I was able to attribute a lot of things that he did in the second one to Slytherin. I was like, oh, okay, got it. That makes sense now. The first one, though, that's where all the Slytherin meat is, I think. It's in how he talks to Diana. It's just even in like little conversations. What was it I said to you today? I DM'd it to you and I was like, this fucking Slytherin and Gryffindor moment. She was like, when they were on the boat, when they were talking, oh man.
I don't know. That boat conversation is all hilarious though, where she's telling him that men aren't needed for pleasure or whatever. And
it's so funny. Yeah, no, just like when they're talking about things, she's just so she's so sweet about it. And she's like, yes, I will be the one to go and kill Ares and I'm going to
oh yeah, he's very like, all right, you do that then.
Yeah, he's like, you poor sweet hot idiot. Like there's so much more going on here. Like I'm gonna have to bring some logic into this woman. Like,
I mean, he never like tells her that's not right or like you're crazy.
No, but you see the judgment in his face where he's like, what the hell? What? Hold on. No, let's backtrack. I'm going to explain this to you. I mean, it's never condescending or like that he's judging her in a harsh way, but you can see it. It's so Slytherin the way that it happens. He's just like, it's endearing to him. He's going to bring her down to earth, but he's so endeared by her. And it's so cute watching them. I love them as a couple. She's just like, oh my God, a baby. And he's like, we gotta go do Nazis.
Like, Diana, no. Or she's like, are you taking me to the war now? And he's like, well, technically it's that way, but we got to go this way first. And she's like trying to turn around. He's like, I'll buy you a ticket to the war if you just come with me first. No, there's a moment when he's introducing her to all of like the crew of people that's going to go to the front with them. And Diana's getting up in her like moral righteousness, like a liar, a smuggler, and now like a killer or something. And he immediately is like, I don't remember exactly what he saes, but he's like, you stole the sword from the Mascara.
I smuggled.
No, he's telling her how she did all that stuff. He's like, you stole the sword from your mom. You like, blah, 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 blah. He's like, liar, smuggler, thief, or whatever. And she's just like, she doesn't say anything. I think she's just like, damn it.
No, it just cuts to another scene. Right. She's just like, huh, okay. Well, that's different because it's me.
Right. And I'm doing things for the right reason.
That whole conversation reminded me so much of like conversations I've had with Lauren where like I'm talking about someone that I don't like or something that they did to me that like they wronged me. And I'm like, burn in hell. You're a terrible person. You're a liar. You're a cheat. And she's like, well, actually, why don't we talk about like you've done stuff like that. I've done stuff like that. And they're actually not terrible because blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I don't want your facts and logic. Get out of here.
This person sucks. Agree with me.
Yeah, just you don't care about any of that. Emotions.
There's so many little moments very, too, like when they're going to the train. Actually, there's a couple here when they're at the train station, and this one's so stupid, but it's just like another thing that I was like interaction where the guy offers her ice cream and she's like, yes, I want one. And she eats it and she's like, this is so good. She's like, you should be very proud. And Steve's like, yeah, you be proud. And like pulls her away. But when they're walking across the bridge, I think once they get there, all of the wounded soldiers are coming back or whatever. And Diana is like, heartbroken over whatever. And he says something like, this is why we're doing this, which like out of context. And again, this is where I was like, is he a Gryffindor? But like, and like you could say it with just that sentence. But I think it was a pretty good look at, after having already heard I tried nothing and now I did something, at also like how Steve is bringing this logic to the brain, to himself. Like, why am I doing this? And like, why am I one of the only people that can do this? And it's like, well, a lot of people are getting hurt. And then it's almost compounded like minutes later when they're in the trench and Diana is, or like, and they're going through all the people too. And she's, oh, this was another like huge Gryffindor thing. She's like, why are they hurting the animals? Like, why? This woman says that the town needs to be liberated. Let's go do it right now. And they're trying to like, they're like, Diana, we cannot, like, the animals have to be whipped because they're not moving fast enough and they're going to be killed if they don't move fast enough. But Steve says, I can't remember where exactly he says it, but it's in one of her, I think it might be in the trench itself when she's like, why don't we cross and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, and he says, Diana, you can't save everyone. And that's where I was like, if this man's a Gryffindor, he's the most mature Gryffindor that I've ever heard.
Right.
Because no Gryffindor, but like a fully, extremely mature, has learned all the lessons in their life that they can Gryffindor would be like understanding of the fact that not every single person can be saved. And then I was like, no, not a Gryffindor. He's a Slytherin. Like, he's being logical about this. He's saving as many people as he can and I think he's doing it in a way that protects himself and protects the people he loves too. Like he was on the spy mission but he had full confidence in himself that he can do it. And he obviously dies in a suicide mission, but he doesn't do it lightly. He knows that it's going to work. So he's not doing things like he wasn't jumping into things like, maybe this will work, this is a crapshoot, or I'm sacrificing myself for the greater good, and like, maybe it'll be okay. That was always a big thing for fucking Harry. Like, he was like, I don't know, maybe throwing myself on this sword will work, and like, never mind the fact that I'm the only person that can do a ton of other things. Like, I'm just going to kill myself in this moment. Like, and we were like, Harry, you need to stop, because you're the only one that can kill Voldemort. You can't just go throwing yourself on other random swords. But he was extremely like logical about the points where he took risks. Because I don't even feel like Steve took risks. Steve did things that he knew would work, or like the things that he knew he had to do. So when it's at the point where they're in the trench, and obviously, like, he says this too, and I'm also a huge history person, but he says this in the movie, that these men have been in this trench for a year and they have not gained an inch. And that was what the entirety of World War I was. You can actually still see those trenches that they dug in space in France.
Wow.
They were there for a long time.
Oh my God.
And they decimated the country. But he like logically was like, you can't save everyone, and those people in the town are probably dead because this army has been here for a year and they're not moving. And so like the whole Armistice thing was going on, and that was probably the only chance or whatever. And like, it wasn't him being cold, but it was, I mean, I guess it kind of was a little, but it was like contrast of a Gryffindor and a Slytherin. A Gryffindor being like, I need to hop up on this battlefield that a bunch of like machine guns are pointed at and save all these people. And Steve being like, some people are just dead. Like, they just are.
No, but this is why I love Slytherin so much. Like, I really do, because they get such a bad rap for being so cold and whatever. And it's like, I feel like people don't take the second to think, to really think about what they're doing in those moments. Like, think about what Steve was doing in that moment. He was saying, they're probably already dead. They haven't gained an inch. Like, you can't just run in. Like, it's ridiculous. It's not going to happen. You have to be realistic. And yeah, like Lauren said, it's easy to go, oh, that's cold. If he was so cold, would he be there? Would he be doing this at all? Would he be fighting at all? Yeah. Like, he's there. Yeah. When other men aren't, and when lesser men would fail, he's there doing it because it matters to him. So just because someone's not wearing it on their sleeve like a Gryffindor does, where they're just going to run into the fire and die immediately and like call it a day, be like, worth it, as they're gurgling on their blood and dying. No. Like, it doesn't mean they're cold, you know?
I mean, I guess this is a more like tempered version of the chosen one syndrome, except it's like applying it more logically in this case. Whereas Steve Rogers is like, I'm the only one that can do this. And he's like trying to get into the war when he clearly wasn't at that point yet. But Steve Trevor is sitting here like he knew at that point that he needed to get to the general or whatever. And like, they needed to stop the gas from happening. So he's like, I can't throw myself up onto this battlefield right at this moment to save this town as much as I want to. And he had just minutes before told Diana, this is why I'm doing this. All these soldiers that are coming back injured. If he goes up on that battlefield and gets shot dead, the hell is he going to do for all those injured soldiers? He's dead. Right. Like, that's it. He's done.
Exactly.
But the second Diana goes up, he's the person who yells, she's drawing all the fire, get up there. Like, as soon as the logic switched, Steve was like, hell yeah, like, this is a good plan, and I'm probably not going to die, so this is like, let's go forward. But like, that's just Slytherin thinking. Like, that's just what it is.
It is. He's extremely calculated and confident in his decisions. He's not going to move if he doesn't know that it's going to work. Like, a Gryffindor won't won't ever do that. They don't need to know if it's going to work at first. Like the effort of it and the potential sacrifice is enough to give a Gryffindor a big ass boner for themselves.
Because I believe it in my heart and I'm full of love. And you're like, oh my God, it doesn't always
We're the worst. We're the worst. Everything is romanticized down to like, especially battles. Like it's ridiculous. Everything's a battlefield to us. So if there's any kind of forethought or confidence and like, I've weighed out the options here. You're not a Gryffindor, probably.
I mean, it feeds into the end goal thing too. Like his job was to stop the gas from being deployed. So that's like what all of his steps were in order to do that. Even up to the point of being like, Diana, you can't come with because you're dressed in a mini skirt and a strapless bra. Like you can't come into the German high command party. And we don't have time to find you a dress. And then Diana goes off and finds a dress and then wants to stick a sword in a man in the middle of all these people. And Steve's like, no, Diana. But
so hot. I can't.
The other big thing was at the point where he told Diana, like we already talked about this from Diana's point of view, but where Steve is saying like, maybe people just are bad. And like, he's acknowledging that and taking fault for it as a part of humanity and whatever because we don't know a ton about Steve's background. He talks a little bit about anecdotes his dad has given him, but we don't know anything about his family, if he has any siblings, like what he did before the war, if he was like a pilot commercially or if he like what he did. So his identity is the war basically, and Wonder Woman 2 does not make any effort to debase us of this notion. Like they don't really give him much else, which is fine, I guess, if he's there as the like support for Diana. But
true.
But he is possibly taking credit for specific things that he has done. And maybe even mistakes he made as a part of the war, like decisions that he made that he now regrets or anything like that. But he's like, I think you can almost tell he's thinking about specific instances when he's like, some people are just bad. And I took some part in that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, yeah. And
he's speaking from experience.
Yeah. And he's telling her he's trying to get through to her that like this is reality and this is humanity and you can't blame it all on this higher being. And that actually was a huge, like historically, that was a huge thing too with the world wars and especially the period between World War I and World War II, the 20s and then the Depression of the 30s. But it was a big question of how could these things happen if there's somebody out there looking out for us? And then it's like, maybe there isn't somebody else out there looking out, or maybe the person up there is like bad, but mostly it was like a time of like lost direction and people just being like, there can be no goodness if all this stuff is happening to us. So that was heavily on everybody's minds too, especially, I mean, by the point World War II had happened, World War I had already happened. So people were like, this has happened already. Like, but like World War I, it truly was like the war to end all wars. They didn't understand why it was happening or how it was happening or how people could be doing this. And so like, I think Steve was not just for Diana, but for like the audience too, like the focal point of that and being like, people fuck up. And like here Steve Trevor is saying that he is a bad person, which is also very Slytherin to own that.
It is.
It is extremely.
It really is.
Yeah. And
I think a Gryffindor would fight that harder.
Yeah, and to just as a Slytherin be able to read other people and to convey that reading to somebody else who like needs to hear it at that time. So.
Yeah. Once Lauren said Slytherin and all the pieces clicked into place for me, I was like, that's exactly what her Gryffindor ass needed, was a Slytherin to ground her, because she was so, I mean, listen, she's naive because she doesn't live amongst humanity. She doesn't really understand the nuances of all that. I mean, it's understandable why she's such a naive character in the first one and whatever. But even so, just say she was just generally naive, like a regular person who's lived amongst us terrible people all the time, like their whole lives. A Gryffindor will still romanticize it. And they'll still be like, but how could you? How could you hurt in like the villages of people where there's children? Like she's like children, babies. Like it's it's burning her up inside. Like, how can you hurt the animal to make him move? There has to be a better way to make him move. And they're like, no, Diana, no, because the animal is going to get hurt if it doesn't. And she's like, whatever, there has to be a better way. You know, there's this righteousness there that sometimes clouds logical judgment and logical thinking. So when she's hurt by her moral code or her belief system, like shattering, he's like, dude, this is reality. Like, welcome to it, accept it, and fight for it anyway, because it's worth it. And, you know, that's enough to help push her along back onto her task. But Gryffindors really need it sometimes. And Slytherins are so the people to ground a Gryffindor. Like, it's such a good pairing. I love them together. Love them. And that was the other thing, too, when we were talking about it, just like in terms of their relationship. When she has to give him up, he's like, go find love. Like, there's so many other people.
He's like, I don't understand how you haven't dated anybody else. There's so many better men out there than me.
Yeah, and like, look at you, right? And she's like, I'll never love again. And he's like, why? Go, like, live. And I was just like, gotta be a Slytherin. Like, it's just so. Lauren actually explained it beautifully about how Slytherins see this. So I know you did.
Now you've hyped me up. I'm gonna try. So because Rachel, because I was like taking offense because Rachel, she already talked about the whole Gryffindor, like, you're never allowed to love again and blah 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 blah. And like, I feel as if Slytherins are that to an extent, because I definitely feel that way about my people. I'm like, they can't love again. Like, I don't want them to or whatever. But like in Steve's case, and I was thinking about this too, Steve is technically dead. Like, he knows he's dead, and he logically knows that there's no way he's going to stick around, because he knows that Diana for herself needs her powers. And also he knows that the world needs her powers. So he is not, like, it has to be her choice. She has to renounce him. But he knows that it's not viable for him to stay around, also in this other man's body. But like, but so I was trying to explain to Rachel, I was like, so like, we're fiercely protective of our people, and Diana is definitely like his person. And like, I understand that, like, and he says it too, when she walks away from him, he's like, I'll love you forever. I'll love you wherever I am. And like, that's it for him. It's Diana. And I told Rachel this too. I was like, if Diana was the one leaving, like, Steve wouldn't, I don't think, date anyone else or fall in love with anybody else. So it's totally hypocritical too. But it's like, at this point, Steve's like, I don't care what you do. I'm dead. Like, whatever. Right. Like, do what you need to do to be happy, because that's what we want for our people. And I was trying to explain to Rachel that we can really, like, Slytherins can really only do this when they're entirely separated. Like, when there's when we are aware that we can do nothing more for you, then the next logical step is whatever is best for yourself needs to be done. And Steve knew that he was dead and that he wasn't going to be there for Diana, and that there's no way that he can be with Diana. So if Diana should date other people and fall in love with other people and find love, and Steve is dead, and like, he's completely removed from that. But if Steve was still somewhere on the earth, Diana's not allowed. He doesn't want her to be with other people because she's his person. Like, she belongs to him. Yeah. But he ain't on the earth. He dead. So he's like, I don't care. Or not, I don't Fair care. Points. Not I don't care, but like, I'm dead. I won't know. So like, whatever. It's fine.
What is it gonna kill me again?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it was when she said it all to me, when she explained it to me, I was like, oh man, that's amazingly selfless. Like, I mean, how stupid is that, right?
How do I marry that with how like selfish Slytherins are supposed to be? But
you're not, though.
It comes
defend Slytherins to the end, man.
It comes from the fact that our core, our motivation, if you will, is self and those we have chosen for ourselves. So, so the selfishness comes from self. But I have seen loads of times where the ones we have chosen for ourselves come before self, and it's almost because we need the ones we've chosen for the health of ourselves. So it's like it feeds itself.
It does.
Yeah.
Well, it's also like that whole like saying if you have to be good to yourself so you can be good to other people. Slytherins have a knack for knowing that. Like, if I'm not right, if I'm not good and solid, like, I'm not going to be of use to others either. So you have to put yourself first. Like, it's something that I really, really envy from that house in general, because it's just not something, it actually doesn't make sense in my brain. So she's sitting there last night telling me, like, yeah, we know when someone is better off and, like, it's time for them to go and be happy, we can let them be happy. I was like, what do you mean?
Only
like,
when you can completely remove yourself. Like,
I know. But I was like, but wait, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean?
Rachel's like, I'm dead and I know you're dating someone else and you're going to die too. And I'm like, I'm dead, man. I'm like, you go. And it was probably like a bit of selfishness on Steve's part too, because Diana's happiness makes him happy. And like, what kind of fucking person would he be when he's about to die and he's like, never date anybody again ever? Like, I don't think he would die feeling good about that. A Gryffindor might, like, they'd be like, yeah, secured it. But I think Steve would not feel good about himself.
Well, then he's not a Gryffindor. No, because listen, I know that's shitty. I know that'd be shitty to do someone. And I don't think, like, okay, getting super morbid, right? Like, if I was dying, I wouldn't say never love again. I simply wouldn't talk about it at all. And then I would feel the assumption is you're not going to. How could you? Come on. So it's, I just wouldn't broach the topic. But he knew she shouldn't be lonely. Like, she needs to have a fulfilling life.
I mean, it's super. It's so incredibly hypocritical too, especially like as a Slytherin. You know how hard it is to. I mean, some Slytherins have much bigger groups of people that they consider theirs, but mostly Slytherins are fairly discerning. So it's like entirely hypocritical that if the situations were reversed, Steve's probably pretty confident that he either purposely wouldn't look for somebody again, or he probably wouldn't find anybody just because of how. Like, just like hard it is for people to get close to him or for him to feel love for another person. But then here he is like, Diana, go, there's hot men out there. And she's like,
yeah, well, you guys,
she's like, no, you guys are giant hypocrites. He's like, what the fuck do you mean you can't do it? It's not that hard as he's about to die. Like, what?
Right. But that's a staple of your house too. You guys are so fucking hypocritical. Are you kidding me? You'll give everyone advice about how to fix their lives, and then you'll be like sitting in the darkness in your room like, but not me though. I deserve the worst. Like, there's people who are categorically like evil and terrible out there, and you're like, no, I'm worse. And you're not like beating yourself up over it. You're just like, no, this is just a fact. Like, I don't deserve good things. That's fine.
No,
I'm cool
but
with it. I just don't.
I can totally own this because there are instances, like, especially like, I can, with conversation with Rachel, I can think of specific instances where I'm like, this is dumb. Stop it. It's not that hard. Just stop. And she's like, I can't. And I'm like, that's really dumb. Yes, you can. Just decide to stop. But then something hits me and she's like, okay, now you stop. And I'm like, no, I can't.
Yeah, that's been like a staple of the last 6 years. Like, and it's so funny because she's so self-aware about it. She's like, I know this is stupid. Like, I can remove myself from it. And if I was in someone else's body, I'd be calling myself stupid. So like, why do I feel this way? I'm like, Lauren, because you have feelings like you're a person. What do you mean? So it's so funny. I think the two houses are so hugely related in so many different ways. That's one of them. We both don't think we deserve good things.
Oh, God.
And like, it's very do as I say, not as I do. It's, yeah. It's just that Slytherins are smarter about it. Sorry, Gryffindors. We're not always the smartest about it.
Well, what is it? It's an emotion house versus a logic house. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily. Yeah. Logic doesn't mean smarter always, but more thinking goes into it than oh my gosh, what led us to talking about Snape? Oh, I said...
We were talking about letting people go.
Yes, but I said Slytherins can only do that when they can completely remove themselves from the person or the thing. So they have to be completely removed. And I was like, and if a Slytherin ends up not being removed, then they're a fucking heroin addict, basically. And Rachel started talking about Snape. And she was like, I don't know why that made me think about Snape. I was like, well, Snape... Because she was like, oh, well, like, Snape looked after Harry because he was like, Lily's dead, so I guess the only thing left to do is to take care of this kid. I was like, yeah, but see, that's the thing. Snape couldn't completely remove himself from Lily, which is why he's a fucking asshole who abuses an 11-year-old. Like, he's a heroin addict. That's what happens.
I like how you're saying addict. Say it again. You're saying addict. It's so cute.
It's because I just watched Bridgerton and they all have British accents where they're like, issues, schedule. Issue.
Oh, I love how they say schedule. Schedule.
Yes, schedule.
It's so funny. She's like, heroin addict. And I'm like, heroin addict? She's saying heroin addict. And yeah, that made me immediately think of Snape. And I was like, why? But yeah, you get it now. So, I mean, that's where we landed. And I, as usual, think we're right. I don't think we're right. I know we're right. Steve is a Slytherin. Diana's a Gryffindor.
Yes.
1000%.
So next time, we're going to be doing something really, really cool. The first time ever. Kind of. Yeah, no, it is the first time ever because Hannah was a guest, but not really because she works on this show. So we're doing a crossover. Ooh, you know, like the CW does when they put all the Arrowverse shows together. Yeah, we're doing like a podcast verse thing. I don't even know. But our friends, Meg and Carla, have a show called Bed, Wed, and Behead, which you should definitely check out if you have never heard of it. It's basically it's a fuck, marry, kill. But they do it with fictional characters. So like we sort fictional characters, they FML fictional characters. So we are going to guest on their show to FML these 3 characters. I won't tell you who the characters are, but I'll tell you the show. It's Once Upon a Time. And then they will come on our show and we'll have a conversation sorting these 3 characters. So it's going to be like a double whammy of you hearing our voices. and we will we'll promo on their show and discuss our FML. Rachel and I are super excited about it because we haven't talked about the sorting at all, but we've been yelling about the FML choices. Part of the show is guessing who the other person is FML'd. So Rachel and I can't tell each other our choices, but we've been like vaguely yelling.
Right.
If you know who I'm doing, then I know who you're doing, that type of thing. So we're really excited. Also, they drink on their show, which we haven't done yet. We could if we wanted to, but drinking is part of the fabric of their show. So also probably tipsiness. But that'll be our next episode. That. Yeah. So our next sorting, the next episode that we release will be us sorting those characters with Meg and Carla. But they will also be releasing an episode that Rachel and I will be guesting on where we FML those characters. FMK. Did I say FML the entire time?
You keep saying FML. Yeah, this is so funny. This is something it's something we were talking about the other day. She kept saying FML, FML. And I was like, yeah, FML, FML. And I'm like, maybe she's typoing and I should stop copying her. It's FMK. We're fucking marrying and killing these people, okay?
Or Bedwet beheading to be more PG as their show is.
Much classier.
Yeah, it's much classier.
It's going to be a very classy affair.
But we're excited about it. Anyway, you know what to do. If you're on Apple Podcasts, rate us 5 stars. Only 5 stars. If you're not going to rate us 5 stars, we don't want it. JK. We'll take 4 too. But we'd really like 5 if you like us. Leave a comment on Apple Podcasts. Listen to us on Spotify. Tweet us at SOB_pod. Email us. I don't know if we've gotten an email because I've never checked.
Text us. My number is 555-821.
You want a little Fran Drescher there.
Let's come over for dinner.
It's 555-821, Mr. Sheffield. God, we should sort them. Anyway, also, if you have...
Oh my God, we should!
Yeah, we should. If you have recommendations for what you want us to sort, please let us know.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Catch you on the next one. Catch you on the flippity flip.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Sorta Brilliant. If our sorting choices inspired any rage or excitement, we'd love to hear from you. We're open to feedback, suggestions for characters to sort, and solid counter-arguments with citations.
Never forget your citations. You can find us hanging out on Twitter and Instagram at SOB_pod or shoot us an email at sortofbrilliant@gmail.com.
And since we're not above begging, please rate and subscribe to Sort of Brilliant on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Please share our posts on social media, and if you're a Gryffindor, maybe you'll inspire sorting fights among your own friend group.
Our theme music is Hot Shot by Scott Holmes. Can't wait to sort with you again next time. Bye!